Welcome to the next episode of Flintco Talks. It's your boy Dano. I'm here live in Austin this morning with three incredible women that I know through the construction industry, and we're going to talk to them today about their roles in the industry and what it's like being a woman in construction. So we'll start across the table. Cristina, can you introduce yourself? Tell us your name, your role, and what company you work for.
Cristina Marrero. I work with Rudick Construction. I'm currently a project executive, basically running the operations side here in the Austin office.
Awesome. Glad you're here today.
I'm Regina Munson. I work for Anchor-Ventana Glass. My role is vice president. I also handle all of our advertising and marketing and business development, and whatever hats are thrown my way, I put them on.
Awesome.
And I'm Kendra Sansa. I'm with Flintco. I'm a project director out of Houston.
Awesome. I'm so glad y'all are all here today. We've all met in kind of different ways, right? We were kind of talking about it at dinner last night, whether it's Kendra, when you kind of transitioned from Alberici to Flintco, we had met, and I think we've both met through ABC and even just through Flintco. So I'm really excited to have y'all here today. I'm really excited for our topic. So thanks for taking time out of your day and for spending some time with us this morning. So I wanted to start just a little bit to talk about your role, kind of your role at your company and kind of how you see yourself fitting in. So Cristina, we'll start with you.
Ooh, see myself fitting in.
Yeah,
okay.
just how you fit in at Rudick. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, we're a very young company.
Mm-hmm.
Our office opened in Austin in 2021. I was on the architecture side. I
Mm-hmm.
was looking to move into the GC side at the time. And I met with our leadership group at the time, and it was very comfortable. It felt very well. It felt like a good click. And yeah, I started pre-construction. I had like a great roller coaster with them. I started pre-construction, then moved to operations, which is what I actually wanted, the move that I wanted to do. And from there, I continued growing. And last year, I made it to project executive.
Nice. Very cool.
And it's been an exciting, scary, everything you can imagine. But I'm learning every day. And it feels great. It feels like an honor to be where I'm at. Because at some point I was the only female in operations in our company. Wow. Well, like entire company. Yeah. And we have grown to have more female in operations. We have more PMs, and I have this role, and I want to have more females that join our team, more women that are capable, are strong, and can get to this. And I'm very sure that the two ladies that we have here today can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Regina, a little bit about you.
Well, I work for my family business, and it is an honor to be able to work there. I never thought in a million years that I would ever be back in the glass business, growing up in it. But I've been there for 10 years now and was recently promoted to vice president. It's an honor to work next to my dad and my mom. I work very closely with our CEO. We have lots of conversations all day, every day. And I think the biggest honor is to be able to carry on this family legacy. We'll be celebrating 50 years of business in about 2 years. So just carrying on what my parents have built. And we've got such a tenured staff. We've got employees that have worked for us for 30 and 40 years.
Wow.
That's great.
So being able to continue that progression and continuing to grow, wonderful talent and people that feel like Anchor-Ventana Glass is a true home for them.
What about you, Kendra?
Okay, so I've been in Houston for about 5 years now. I started with Alberici. So I've been with the organization my entire career. And I have a little bit varied perspectives just because I was with Alberici and then came to Flintco. But here with Flintco, we're set up as regional offices. So it's been exciting the last 5 years. Houston is a relatively new office. Flintco's been around for a very long time, but Flintco Houston has only been around about 6 years. So, we have that kind of younger company feel within our local office. And in the last 5 years, I've really, I've worked my way up as well. But I've had a really good opportunity to work very closely with our office because it's a really small, tight-knit group of people, and develop those relationships so that in my current role, I've worked alongside people that I'm now overseeing. So it's been a good, yeah.
Yeah, so Flintco's gonna be 117 years old this year, right?
Yeah.
And so 6 years into that is just a tiny spot in what Flintco's history is. But Houston's definitely coming into their own. Got a big win here a couple weeks ago at George R. Brown. So
Yeah, it's
the
exciting.
the rest of Flintco is cheering them on. So
That's fantastic.
that's really cool.
It's very Congratulations.
Yeah, that's
Thank
exciting.
you. Yeah.
Christina, I wanted to jump back and talk about, you said you started in architecture. Like why do you start in architecture, right? Everybody has dreams when they're in high school or college, and you kind of went through architecture and then you said you wanted to jump into construction. Talk a little bit about that transition for you.
So a little bit of background. I'm the only one in my family. I know in this industry, many people are like, oh, my dad was in construction. I was with him in the trailer. And I'm like, no, not in my family. I'm the first one that went into the AEC industry.
Nice.
Went to architecture, bachelor's, master's, back home in Puerto Rico. Did a couple years, did 2 years over there, then moved to Austin, worked in architecture. The last firm I worked at, I did a lot of project management, and I enjoyed it. That was the dream job. Like, I enjoyed it. I had fun. It was problem solving. It had a lot of good things. And I knew that if I wanted to be a better project manager, I needed to learn how to build it. So
Thank you from all those construction folks.
So that kind of turned the way, and it's like, okay, I need to look for options. If eventually, let's say I want to do my own thing because my kid and all that stuff, I need to think of life ahead, the long term. And I said, I need to learn how to build it. And yeah, I've never had much more fun than I'm having right now on the GC side.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah. It's fast paced. There's a lot happening. Days go by very fast. It is stressful because it is stressful, but it is a lot of fun.
Regina, you mentioned when you talked about back to the family business that you've worked there 10 years. I know you've been out of college longer than 10 years. So what was your path back to Anchor? Or what was your super excited goal when you graduated from college, what you wanted to do, and how did you make that turn back to the family biz?
Well, I had a couple of different jobs. I was in commercial real estate appraisal, and then I did commercial insurance. The common factor there was I was always in jobs where there were people. I was around people. It didn't matter what industry it was in. I just loved being around people. I'd always told my father and my mother that if there was the opportunity to come back and work for the business, then I would want first right of refusal. Dad's rule was we had to work for someone else for at least 10 years before we could come back and work for Anchor-Ventana. I guess it was about 15 for me, and opportunity presented itself. I was living in Dallas at the time for about 10 years and was ready to make a move, and a business development opportunity came about, and I took the leap and said, okay, I'm moving back. And it's been such a great thing since I've been back. I've learned a lot.
Awesome. And I'm sure your parents were like, didn't know if you were going to come back. Did they ever tell you like, hey, we knew you'd come back someday? Or...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, I think we were all shocked.
Yeah.
Even my friends.
That's awesome.
But it's been really cool getting back involved in the Round Rock community. And even though I live in Austin, I'm involved in the Austin community as well. But it's nice.
What about you, Kendra? You kind of, like you said, you started at Alberici, and that's a totally different company. The way they're set up is totally different, right? Everybody's kind of from St. Louis, but they travel. And was there something that drove that decision for you to come to Flintco?
Well, I mean, first off, I actually studied architecture also. So
did you really?
Yeah. So I went to my undergrad. I got a bachelor's in architecture, and then went to get my master's so that I could eventually become a licensed architect. And by midway through grad school, I was getting pretty burnt out of architecture, and I decided to get a second master's in construction management, and that's how I ended up in construction. I was too stubborn to stop my degree in architecture, so I finished that one as well. But at the time, it was during the recession, and a lot was still getting built because the drawings had been done, pre-recession. But a lot of architecture firms weren't hiring at the time. So I had a professor that gave me an AGC directory So all like direct contacts. And I emailed the vice president of Hillsdale Fabricators at the time, Mike Burke, and he called me back. I was surprised. And that's how I ended up in construction. So it was really just, I was getting a degree, but it was, the purpose of that was to be more marketable as an architect. Yeah. And then once, similar to you, once I got into construction, I love the fast pace and the people and the problem solving, and I never looked back. I never went into architecture after that. So
yeah, I always get asked if I'm ever coming back.
Yeah, yeah. I get asked, do you want to go get your license someday? I'm like, I'm really kind of liking what I'm doing right now.
I have my license.
Yeah,
I do. It's maintaining it. Is the hardest part, but yeah.
So then worked my way through the company, and here I am.
And you like the transition here to Flintco?
I do, yeah.
Good.
I mean, as you know, Dano, being part of the company, like we have a lot of interaction between Alberici and Flintco. So it really hasn't been, other than the kind of coming from a big office and then going to a newer small office, the transition was fairly easy.
Awesome. So one thing I wanted to kind of talk about for the next few minutes is really when people think of construction, you always hear them say, oh, it's a male-dominated industry, and it's because it's hard and it's high stress and it's fast-paced. I've never really looked at it as that. It's always like, hey, if there's somebody on my team, I just want them to show up. I want them to do what we asked them to do, and I want them to perform, right? And it doesn't matter the color of your skin, what sex you are, any of that. So it's always like, hey, I just need a team member, and if that team member can carry on. So when y'all thought about coming into construction, did that cross your mind, being like, oh, this is a male-dominated industry, and I don't know how I'm going to do that? Or was that just never held you back from your decision?
I never really thought about it, honestly. I think it was years into my career that I specifically remember a moment. I was lucky, and we can talk about that. I had some great women early on in my career that I worked with, so I didn't really know any different. I mean, we had a core group of women. There was women in upper management within Alberici at the time already. So it was a couple years into my career. I remember sitting in a room, and I was leading a meeting, and I looked around, and there's 30, maybe 35 people in the meeting, and I'm 10 years younger than most of them, and I was the only woman, and there was nothing wrong with it. They treated me with respect, but I do remember having that kind of like, I'm the only one, just like but that was,
And I bet it still happens.
It does. It happens all the time.
How many times?
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
I was weary. It's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going into male-dominated. And not just because I was a female, I'm also Hispanic. So I do have a few marks that tick that a minority card. I never want to play it, but it was a push, if I'm honest. It was the fire that I'm like, okay, I need this. I need to make it happen. This is not for them. This is for me. I do not owe anyone outside of this anything but myself. I need to do it for me, my growth, my learning experience. And I think that's what still to date. It's like there are so many times I find myself to be the only female in the room, and it's like I'm not gonna let that take me down. I'm gonna use this for fuel.
Do you feel that though? I don't think about it too much. It's just on occasion. It's so common still to be the only female in the room that most of the time the thought doesn't even cross my head. It's only like on the rare occasion that you kind of like have maybe a moment of silence in a meeting and you look around and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. But
sometimes when they're talking,
that's kind of the way I feel right now. I'm looking around the room. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm outnumbered.
But you're going into meetings. You're there to do your job. You're not thinking about that aspect. So, yeah.
That's great. It's so good to hear because from my perspective, I think I'm hypersensitive to it. It's just like, oh my gosh, I want to make sure that if I have a female on my job, I treat them. But it's like in the end, it's kind of like they're just another member of the team, right? Yes. It's another member of the team, and you're going to get the same conversation that I would give to anybody else. Like if you're not performing, it's kind of like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. I know we shared a similar trade partner a couple years ago on a project that I was working on. And I remember talking to this guy, and he's like, I hate talking to Kendra. He's like, she's tough on me. She's like, and I'm like, well, why is she tough on you? He's like, well, she's just holding us accountable. And I'm like, well, what did you expect her to do, dude? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so he would call me and be like, hey, can you call Kendra and see if you can find this out for me?
I don't think you ever told me.
That's why I was texting you asking like, hey,
Yeah,
what's
I'm
the
like,
update?
how do you know so much about my job, Daniel? We're not even in the same city.
When do you need the flashing on the front of the parking garage? So I want to circle back to something you said just a minute ago, Cristina, about how to get capable, strong females in the industry, right? And I think back to, I went to school at Texas A&M, got a construction science degree. I went to school for 5.5 years. I liked it so much. Only with a bachelor's. I didn't come out with 2 masters, so I'm super impressed by that, Kendra. That's awesome. But when I was in construction science at A&M, like we had 2 or 3 girls in the whole, just in the whole
program.
class and the whole program. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I wonder what the difference is. So as we continue to grow and the construction science college continues to grow at A&M, I see more and more females at the career fair, which is really cool. So I wanted to ask y'all, like, what can we do as an industry to get more capable, strong females involved?
I think it's support in reality, and I think what we're doing here today it's a door that's opening for them. They're seeing that there's females of different backgrounds, different stories, and are still in construction, and we're all thriving. The reality. So I think podcasts like this, like events like we do with ABC and different other GC organizations, that they're helping the younger generation and opening and showing them the opportunities that are available. I mean, I wish I have the opportunities, and I knew what the opportunities were. I was kind of not lost, but I didn't know the world of options that were out there.
Yeah.
And I think also social media and the internet has helped so much to open the doors to knowledge of what's out there.
What about?
Yeah, I would say the same. We did a presentation at New Caney High School, which is a suburb of Houston, the other day, and then we had a specific slide on, like, you know, these are 17-year-olds roughly getting ready to start their, like, you know, from going into the trades to being a project manager to getting into like VDC. You know, even our teams here, marketing, you know, there's so many options within the construction industry. And I know for me, when I was young, you know, I never thought about going into construction, but you think construction is one thing, like, you know, it's all about the mud on your boots and being out on the job. And there is a lot of that, and I like doing that, but you know, there are other options, and I think that's really important. And it's a good job. I mean, you can be successful early, quickly in your career, and have a comfortable living, and you know, so there's a lot of opportunity.
There's growth.
Absolutely.
Construction is something that there's always growth.
I think showing up as well. You know, we were discussing last night, and you mentioned this morning how, you know, some of us are involved in ABC. ABC, as an example, has, you know, careers in construction, and that's a great way to get high school students out. And I know that both of us were out at Careers in Construction this year, showing up and seeing, you know, there were a ton of young ladies that were out there, and letting them see that there are women in this industry. Also, to your point, Kendra, you know, the marketing showing that we've got female estimators, females that are out in the shop that are doing fabrication, females on the job sites, you know, wearing their hard hats and, you know, basically all of their PPE. It's showing up.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And sometimes there's a stigma about construction, right? Everybody thinks that the construction is, you're sitting at the stoplight and you look next to you and there's a ditch and there's like 4 or 5 people in the ditch, like digging. And immediately when you're like in 6th grade, you're like, I will never do that. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to. And so the Careers in Construction was an awesome day. I think we had over 600 students that were out there from 17 different schools, I believe, and 35, 36 different contractors, trade partners out there. And I was actually out there and with Caleb, our videographer, and we had a little Flintco microphone and we were asking questions. And it was really cool to hear the students say, I enjoyed going to the Walker Engineering booth and I learned how to bend conduit. And I enjoyed going over here to the Merrick Brothers booth and I got to use the drill to install drywall. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what it can be, right? It doesn't just have to be the ditch digger. So I think we as really as the whole industry really need to break that stigma and show up and be a part of those things and say, hey, this is a way that you can be successful. This is the way that that I grew up through the business, and look at where I am today, right? All of y'all are in incredible, roles inside your companies and have a bunch of direct reports, and that you're responsible for those people. So it's a testament to y'all's hard work and really what your dedication is. Like, I loved what you said, like you owe it to yourself to be strong, right? When you're sitting in that meeting, you owe it to yourself to perform, right? Not for, but for yourself, right? There's satisfaction in getting the job done, right? Doesn't matter who's in the room with you. So that's really cool. I wanted to take a minute and talk about mental health also. Like, mental health is something I think all of y'all have talked about, stress in the industry and that it's fast paced. And we really started the podcast years ago talking about mental health. So when somebody says mental health, what does that mean to y'all? What comes to mind?
I mean, within the construction industry, you mentioned, I think it's the stress of it, and it's the being able to balance I think I would imagine you guys are the same, correct me if I'm wrong, but my brain continues to go when I leave work. So I'm thinking about the things I have to do, but I have 2 children and I have a husband. And so I'm going home and you have to learn to kind of shut that side off and then be able to focus. And I had mentors that when I started, having children, that spoke to me about these things, but you really have to learn it for yourself too, to be able to compartmentalize your responsibilities. And people, I've struggled with that at times, and people that struggle with that, it's just really hard to balance that. And it takes time and kind of practice to be able to let the stresses of work go, to focus on your family when you get home. So specific to construction, that's
it's that life-work balance.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There are days that it's very hard. Some days it's easier. It's having a good support team behind you, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, family, you find your support team. But mental health is also talking about it, speaking up, and I think as you keep going up the ladder and are in different leadership positions, it gets lonelier. The reality is, because you are able to discuss certain things and not others. And sometimes it makes the job easier or harder. But also at home, you've been a full day at work. You may had a stressful day, and then you get home and you want to talk about it. You want to let it out, so you're able to then click it into parent mode or family mode, whatever. It's your thing. And sometimes it's very hard. It's like, do I want to talk and bring the stress home, or do I just bottle it up and let's deal with this and let's be the best person I can be for this growing child. But yeah, I think every one of us deals with it in a different way. Is how we cope with the stress and our mental health. For me, I like to dance it off.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a tough topic, but it's like, how do I bring positivity? I try to think of most of the things like glass half full. Okay, this happened, but do we still have an option? So
that's a huge, big point is, like I run. So like you have to find those outlets to be able to, get rid of that stress and focus on your family when you get home. And
I think it's also important to have a life outside of the office, making sure you have a friend group that's not necessarily just your coworkers or industry people. And having that separation, having some other mentors that are outside of the industry. And to your point, Cristina, having a hobby, having something that's your release, dancing, running, Mind's Live music, going to the gym, all having that. And it's hard. It's hard. And also what you were saying, it can be lonely as you continue growing. There's the oak on the island is a real deal. It's a real feeling, but making sure that you know where that outlet is. You may not be able to talk to your coworkers about some of the stresses of work, but luckily you've got a supportive spouse that you can talk to, and hopefully there's other people that you feel comfortable enough to downloading, the day with.
And then there's also not just mental health personally, it's also how we support our team. Because we're in positions that we also have to support our team and make sure that they're doing well, that they're being able to do the work, that are they going to be able to show up? Is something happening? Do you need help? Do you need to take a break? Things like that. I think that that's key too. It's not just our mental health. We're also now, we need to be aware that there's a team that reports to us and how we manage that.
Right. We've been reminding our employees on a quarterly basis now, because we'll have new employees hired, and reminding them that we've got the EAP program and how important that is. And one of the beauties of being family owned and operated company is we have a little bit more flexibility for whatever someone's going through in life. You know, so if someone's going through a divorce, you know, they might have court hearings, for example, and, you know, they've got PTO, but if they need to extend maybe an hour or two, we're going to be thoughtful and mindful of that. You know, if it's an everyday deal, that's a little bit different, but really just having some grace for the employees and, again, making sure that they feel at home because they're part of our extended family.
We never know exactly the full story of what's happening, you know, and we can support the best way we can.
Yeah, I think that's what's key to having a good company and having good culture, right? Is having that support group and having, you know, a life outside of work, like you're saying, like, but inside of work, like having the support group as well is somebody that you can talk to, right? You're supposed to gripe uphill, right? You're not supposed to gripe downhill. That's something that's hard, right? Especially I'm on a job site with a staff of like 12 or 13 people. It's really easy to go, I'm going to go over next door to Tyler's office and I'm going to complain about this, right? But as a leader, it's kind of like you have to have somebody that you can talk to. So how do y'all do that inside your company? Or like when you look at the company culture, right? Obviously, y'all have worked for your companies for a long time and you've got a support system. Like are there certain people you lean on, or are there people that lean on you as well? And how do you make yourself available for that?
I mean, early on in my career, if you know Kristen Kalous or Janine Engel, so they were already, 10 years ahead of me in their career. So as I came up through Alberici, I had various times where they really like mentored me, specifically as a woman. But especially when I got pregnant with my son, they sat me down, even, they pulled me into the office. They sat me down. Greg Kozik was in the meeting and said,
really?
We support you. Like
Wow.
You're having a child, but like that doesn't, you, if you choose to leave and stay home with your child, we support that. We would love you to stay. And so I felt so comfortable and mentored and supported. Now in our office, I do have some peers that in pre-construction or another project director, or even Joel, who's my boss. And so that's kind of safe zone. We can talk about the things that are stressors. And then to my folks, because I've worked with most of them for 5 years now, I think we have a level of comfort with each other that you can feel when you go in a job site trailer and someone's struggling. Sometimes, you have to take that moment and step aside. Sometimes you have to be, if it's not personal struggles, if it's work struggles, sometimes you have to be tough and say, I know this is hard and this is rough, but we have to get through it. Yeah. So just kind of feeling out the room and knowing how to support those people is important.
Yeah, and being a good leader is about understanding your direct reports, understanding what they need, and like you said, you can feel when something's off, right? And you have to encounter it somehow. You have to be able to go up and say, hey, look, let's chat for a minute. I know something's going on. How can we help you? And that's great to hear that it's easy to tell. And I know you're somebody that would definitely encounter that and say, hey, what's going on? Is there something I can help you with? What about at Rudick? Do you feel like you've got a great support system there too?
I do. I can't complain.
Yeah.
Yes. We do have kind of our one-on-ones, which are very typical, but I do have one-on-one that is with a higher up. And I feel that it's typically late in the week that I've had all the fires, all the meetings, everything. And it's like, okay. And he has been where I am before. And I'm like, how do you manage this? And I just try to take tips and then I tell him like, this is happening. Like, and it's just the comfort. And typically his words are, if you are being asked to do this, is because you are being trusted to do it.
Oh, wow.
And that goes a long way. And it's like, okay, I need to take a step back, breathe, calm down. I'm going to get through this. This is not eternal. I'm going to be able to, I'll have to treat it step by step. So, yeah.
I love the thought that if you're asked to do something, you're trusted. Yeah. I've never thought of it that way. Like you always have to explain it like you're asking a young engineer, like, hey, you have to review this submittal. Yes, it's important that we get all 77 colors of caulk in front of the architect so they can pick what they want, right? Architects in the room, yes, you want to see them all, right? So
just to pick the same one every time.
Yeah.
Or just want to know your options.
Match it to adjacent material.
We're going to go with the precast white again. Thank you so much. But I like the fact that you say that you're trusted, right? I always have to explain. It's like making the sausage. Like you go to the grocery store and the sausage is made and there's like 100 things that go into it. And as a consumer, you don't realize that. And so I try to explain that to my young engineers. It's like, it's important to send this in because someday somebody's going to stand in front of the building and they're going to look at the caulk and they're going to say, man, that looks really nice. And it's because you took the time to get all the Dow 795 samples turned in to get the right color picked. But also, I think by saying you're trusted, that goes a long way. It's kind of like, we know you can do this. Like, we want you to do it. Step up to the plate, make it happen. So that's something I learned today. I'm going to take with me.
Yeah, I might need a pen too. I'm going to write that one down.
I'll send you an email after this. So what about you, Regina, at the family business? Like, do you feel like the support system as well? I'm sure it's a little bit different interaction with your dad or maybe some other family members that work for the company. Do you feel like you're supported well?
Absolutely.
That's
I definitely
awesome.
feel supported. And there's really two people that I can complain up to.
Yeah.
But we also really prefer to have the open door policy. So I like knowing that our employees feel supported. I'm always the employee advocate.
Yes.
So they can come into my office at any time. I mean, while I'm not HR, I'm another avenue if someone needs to escalate or just have a vent session. So I like being able to do that. And, really, if there's another way that I need to feel supported, I've got two people that are very special in my life that are both business owners, have been quite successful. And one is in an industry similar to ours, and another is in the software industry. And both of them have shared so many stories and just offer their support to me, offer their advice. When I'm having a hard time on a specific situation, I reach out to them. And then also I've got a lot of my industry peers that, I can pick up the phone and call, and whether we're talking about a specific job that we might be working on together or just how's it going? What's the market looking like from your perspective? Yep. Are you feeling the same pain we might be feeling? Are you feeling the same, gratitude? Is it on fire like we're feeling in a great way? So it's really nice to have those connections too and feeling supported from them. And to your point earlier, it's kind of a safe space. That when you make that phone call, it's staying there. It's a vaulted conversation.
Yeah, I love the vent session thought, right? Everybody's got somebody you have to call and vent, right? Because when you bottle it up, you hold on, and you hold on. But as soon as you can speak the words into existence, you can't hide from it anymore, right? And there's something freeing about being able to say that and say this person really made me mad today. And whoever you're telling that to go, hey, shake it off. It's not a big deal. We can get past this, and like you said, you never know what's going on in somebody else's life. So I think having that, I love to hear that, right? Even though if you run or you dance, you got to have a vent partner, right? And sometimes you can be the person vented to, but you've got to be able to vent to somebody else as well. So I'm thinking about some of those people in my life, and when the phone rings, you're like, this is either going to be a really fun conversation or it's going to be a question about work.
5 minutes or an hour?
Exactly. It's so if I'm driving home, it's always answer. I'm like, hey, lay it on me. Tell me what you got. So what's the tea? What can I help you with? So all of that's really important. It's great to hear that each of y'all have kind of your own support system, and it's something everybody needs. So if you're listening, I'd tell you to it's important to be a supporter, but also to have somebody support you. And and if you can't have somebody that supports you or don't have somebody that supports you, find somebody that you can, right? It doesn't have to be your significant other, but it could be an industry professional that can help you weigh in on kind of what you're looking at. And if you're really jaded or if you really have a gripe or complaint. So back to the mental health thing I was going to ask about, is there something else as mothers in the industry the advice that you would give to listeners that are thinking, oh my gosh, if I get pregnant, how am I going to be at work? Is it going to be different? Or is there anything I want to discuss in that realm?
You really need to find a company that like supports that. I mean, that was key. With both my children, I was working under different individuals within Alberici at the time. But and even now, now that my kids are grown, anyone I've worked for within this organization has been nothing but supportive. And you know, as a young project engineer pre-children, I found value in working hard. I still do, but if something was going wrong, I would just work longer. You know, I would work late into the night. And once you have children, you can't do that, nor do you want to, because you want to be home with your children. And so I had to make that adjustment mentally. And when I struggled with that, the people that supported me, you know, they're like, your life is different now. Like, stop stressing about that. Go home. It'll be here tomorrow, you know? And so I think that's important. Find a company that supports that and you'll be all right.
My father always says, work will be there tomorrow. Work will be there tomorrow. And it's like, okay, I'll get there, you know?
Yeah.
Does that get easier to hear the older you get?
No. No.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think I've been to many female talks and panels, and you get the female woman, strong woman that's leadership in their company and has kids, and it's a very personal decision how you want to work with that balance. And you can hear the story that is like, no, my kids were at daycare from the moment it opened to the moment it closed, and after that, if I needed a babysitter, then that would be taken care of. For me, that's not it. I want to be a mother. I want to be there. I want to be a good professional. I want my career to succeed, but I also want to be there for my kid. Because I do feel like he will see me that I'm working hard, but my work doesn't take priority over him. And I think it's a very personal decision. That's not for everyone. Not every woman is going to think it the same way, but it's how do you set things up? How do you think about it? It's where do you stand?
I think, you know, this is a female conversation because females are the ones that have the babies, but this is a topic for both men and women. I mean, we have a lot of young men in our company in Houston that are in that phase of life, having babies, and we have to be flexible with them as well. So that they are there for their children, you know. So, you know, it's really like it's the pregnancy, it's the maternity leave, and being supportive throughout that time, and then at that point, it's, you know, it opens up to being supportive of all family.
I don't have children, but to your point, you know, finding a company that's supportive of children and, you know, every phase of motherhood. But one thing that I think is also key in finding that company that is supportive is making sure that company can support you throughout your child's, you know, early years. I mean, till they're 18.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be choir concerts and t-ball games, and sometimes, you know, your spouse can't, or your significant other cannot pick them up. Yeah. So is your company going to be forgiving for that? Is there, you know, some big event, you know, National Honor Society, or your child's receiving some award, and they're no longer, you know, a 5-year-old or in daycare. They're in high school, and it's huge. It's impactful on them, you know, having their parents there. You know, my parents were present for everything, even being business owners. I think it was critical in our upbringing to have them present. And so I think that a company that supports both men and women being able to have a little bit more flexibility to show up for their kids too is important.
And I like that you both mentioned like being in companies that support that. I don't want to say that I wasn't supported during my pregnancy and maternity leave, but it wasn't the best situation. And I think we kind of mentioned it earlier, but I was pregnant during COVID. I found out January 2020. We told the family March 2020. Oh, wow. We told our friends the day before lockdown was announced.
Oh my gosh.
So nobody really ever saw me pregnant. And it was like a whole ordeal, but we were still considered essential. So we had to still show up to the site, make sure that the construction was happening, that it was in accordance to the construction documents. And it was an interesting event.
I can only imagine.
And then giving birth with a mask was not
Oh
fun.
no.
Well, and no one can come in the hospital room.
Yeah, just one person, a mask at all times. We actually had to get tested for COVID before we actually got admitted into the hospital.
What are they
Wow.
gonna do if you
It's
you still get
so-
to go in the hospital?
Well, that hospital was a clean site.
Okay,
So,
you'd go end up
they
at a
would have
different
sent us to a different
Oh, wow.
hospital.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy. It was hard enough just to work during COVID. Being an essential worker, and you had your little letter from the president in your car. Like,
I'm okay.
I'm
be
going to
here.
work. Yeah.
Essential.
Yeah, it was great. The traffic was great during that time of year.
Oh my
but
God, yes.
I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine trying to go through that pregnancy at that time. Like
And
we
there
couldn't
were so
even
many
go.
unknowns.
Yeah, we couldn't even go to church without having to have a mask, and
Right.
like every other pew, and like you had to sit like 3 seats from somebody else, and it was hard just doing that. I can only imagine being pregnant.
Yeah, and then it's like you have to take the kid to a daycare, but daycares were not all open. And what are we going to do? I have to get back to work. I cannot continue on maternity leave. So it was a lot to navigate, but we got through it. Not impossible. Again, that support system.
Yeah, it's really
Sounds-
important.
yeah.
We got 2 guys that are on my job right now that their wives are pregnant, and same thing. It's like every couple of weeks, it's like, have the anatomy scan, we have the checkup, we have this, we have that. It's like, as somebody that's been through it, it's like, go. Like you
Yeah,
need to be a
don't
part
miss
of
that.
that. Like that's so important.
Yep.
It's important for your wife. It's even important for the doctor to see you there. So
Yes.
that's really awesome. I want to shift gears on y'all. So one of the biggest talks in construction right now is DEI, right? And not even just in construction, like across all industries. Like, hey, we've got to have this. So I went and looked it up just to see exactly what the definition is, because there's 100 different, like if you're on Twitter, or I'm sorry, if you're on X, or if you're Facebook or whatever, there's always these articles, and there's always like this person fired, or this person needs to do this or do that. So I went and looked it up. It basically says creating just a fair playing field for anybody that wants to work here, that everybody has the same opportunity. And I don't feel like that's a big ask. Like I don't feel like that's crazy. What are y'all here from the female perspective when you hear DEI? What do you think of, and is it like put off, or is it kind of like, oh, it is what it is?
To me, it's kind of, it is what it is. You know, I've not really felt that I've not been included or excluded in both our industry and our business. You know, I want to thank all the ladies that paved the way for us, that really fought for women's rights to be able to get to this point. But really, I mean, whatever your shape, size, color, sex, everyone's welcome. And at the end of the day, we're all here to do a job. We're all human. We all have the same blood running through our veins. And, you know, you show up, do your job.
I think sometimes that, you know, acronym has a stigma to it.
Totally.
So within Flintco, we have a diversity and inclusion council, but it's specifically diversity and inclusion. So it's not focusing on equity or equality. It's focusing on diversity and inclusion. And I think it's good to have a focus on those things. I mean, we did some studies a couple of years ago as part of a leadership program that I was in within Flintco on diversity and inclusion, and there's a business case for it. So if outside of the social side of that, you know, in the next 5, 10, 15 years, like we as an industry have to get more diverse and inclusive because we can't sustain with our current demographic. So there's just not going to be enough white males, or, you know, we have to grow. So I think how companies look at that and how they address it is important. I think Flintco does a good job and how we address it. But ultimately, yeah, we're looking at people, regardless of their race or sex or whatnot, and finding the best people for the roles that we have. So
I think it's, like Regina said, it is what it is. You know, I think you're a person, you can do the job, you have the quality, the correct character and qualities
Mm-hmm.
to perform the job. Like I'm not gonna look at anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just want a person that can do the job, do it right, good quality, that is able to communicate. It doesn't matter how you look,
Right.
what you identify as. It's can you get it done?
Can you be a unit producer?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
Can we communicate? Are you gonna fit within our culture?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're gonna make it work.
Yeah. See, I think like Kendra, like you said, there's a stigma about it, and there's all these strong stances against it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, why would you not want the best person capable for the job in the role? Right. I think everybody would agree that that's the best way to do it. And if there's companies that aren't doing it that way, it's like, don't go work for them. It's kind of the way I feel about it also. It's like, it's not something that has to be done. But like you said, Kendra, it's like, hey, we need to be open. And as people come through high school and want to get into the industry, not everybody can be an influencer, right? There's like 35% of eighth graders. Like
That's their
I read
goal.
some study that, it said 35% of eighth graders want to be an influencer when they grow up. And I'm going, what else can I be influenced on, right? Yeah. So I'm wearing a poncho shirt, always wear Jordans. It's like, that's as far as I'm going to be influenced. Other than that, like I'm good.
Where's your skill set?
Yeah, exactly.
Just videoing yourself.
Hey,
You know,
Yeah,
post
selfies.
selfies.
Yeah, exactly. Have a pot. Yeah, but it's like, who's going to build the roads? Like, who's
Right.
going to build
Yeah.
schools? Who's going to build bridges?
influencing doesn't necessarily build things.
No, it doesn't. It builds followership, which is
That's true.
pretty big for people these days. So, but I thank y'all for sharing your perspective on that. And I would totally agree. That's like, hey, we want the best person in this role that can perform, right? And is the unit producer, can get the caulk submittal lined out, so we're good to go and ready to move forward.
I think
But it's interesting what you brought up. Like if the statistics do say that basically that within construction there needs to be more inclusivity because there may not be the right demographic in a couple years. That's very interesting. It's like how is that identified? And
There's
all
a
that stuff.
ton of studies on that. I mean, we just aren't going to have enough people in this industry. Like we have to look outside of what is typical. And I think we talked earlier, you guys both mentioned that you've gone to various talks with students and whatnot. It's really important to look at, down to the high school level of introducing people to that so that they're developing up through and they are the best people for the role once they're educated and ready to come into the industry.
Yeah, workforce development is huge, especially in Central Texas right now. Like we had Norris Sebastian in here several months ago, and he was the CTE leader for Del Valley High School, and talking to Norris about that, and and he had numbers saying that we're going to be 30,000 construction workers short in Central Texas over like the next 10 years. I've heard that number as high as 60 or 80,000. But if you just look at the huge jobs, you think about Samsung, you think about the convention center, you think about the new hospital that's going over close to UT, you think about the airport work, and it's like, we are going to be out of workers. Not everybody's going to have a $2 billion project on their ledger, right? There's going to be people like, we need jobs that aren't $800 million jobs, and we need
the ones that maintain you.
That's exactly right. And where you can build people, right? You go work on a team of 25 people, sometimes you can get lost, right? You don't have the support system, and you end up just bailing out saying, hey, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So it's definitely a challenge. So as we look forward into that shortage, like what are ways that we can give back?
When a lot of the kids, they're not following in their parents' footsteps. Christina, you mentioned that you're the first one to be an architect and be in the construction industry. Years ago, you look at people whose grandfathers were a carpenter, and that's what they ended up being. And it's third generation, sometimes fourth generation. That's not really what's happening these days. We grew up in a generation or an era where all of our parents pushed us to go to college. I'm grateful for that, and I think it's a wonderful thing. But at the end of the day, college isn't for everybody, and as we all know through some of our trade associations and just the industry creating awareness to reach out to those students and start recruiting at earlier ages, you can tap into that, and you can tap into those folks that aren't ready for college. Maybe they want to go to college later on. Maybe it's that hands-on experience that they get by interning or being on a job site that gives them the path or shows them the path of hey, maybe I do want to be a project manager for a general contractor. Maybe I do want to be a glazer and get out there and set glass in the curtain wall.
Well, and I think students that go into like the trade school, they have to see, it's not hey, I see a construction worker on the side of the road. It's like you can make a really good living quickly. I mean, if you're going into the trades, and everyone speculates that the college bubble will burst eventually and more people are going to start going to trade schools. And I think those, making people know that those options are out there is really, really important.
And I do feel like schools are doing a very good job at bringing that up again. It's like there's the talk and the studies that there will be a gap of employees of a certain age because our parents decided that, you're going to go to college, you're going to make a living, and come to realize it in hindsight, it's like it will create some gap in construction and finding employees with a certain amount of experience. But there's also a shortage on the trades. And it's so good that, there are trade partners that are offering apprenticeship that allows them to go to trade school, but also to make a career as they're doing that. And that is great and a good path for the near future.
Yeah, I feel like it is too, and being able to provide that education for folks and understanding like, hey, you can make a good living, right? And it doesn't have to be the guy that's digging the ditch. Yeah. Maybe it is for a year, and then if you show some promise, you can advance to the next level, and then you're a foreman, and then you're a superintendent. And I can see the gap right now, right? Superintendents that have been around forever and know what it was like to build a building when the drawings were complete, right? And not have 400 RFIs or something like that. And they just know how to solve all the problems. It's like when those folks retire, are we ready to pick up the gauntlet and run with it? Like, do we have the skill set, right? Or is they're going to look to our generation of like, hey, y'all are the ones that have to carry it on, right? And are we doing a good job with the tools we've been given to teach those below us? I hear it all the time. It's like, oh, our new people, they don't know how to do anything. I'm like, well, that's a reflection on you.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't have the skill set. They don't know how to do
anything. They're just starting a career.
That's right. And it's kind of like
them. You were there at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
And I didn't know how to do anything.
And it's a reminder. It's kind of like, hey, that's a reflection on you, right? Who taught you to review a submittal? Who taught you to write your first RFI, right? Yeah. And it's taking time and spending time with these folks, even at a 9th or 10th grade level, of kind of like, hey, come into the office, you can kind of see what we're doing. And that's something that we're trying to do more of here. We had some students from Del Valley here just a couple weeks ago, and we kind of had a couple trade partners in to talk to them. And then we took them out to the Modern, and they toured the Modern, and they talked to a couple, leadmen, foremen, whatever you want to say, that didn't go to college. And we're like, man, I'm freaking killing it, right? Go downstairs and check out my big truck. I got a motorcycle. I got a boat. And I'm
my
just...
house is paid off.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, or you can be like Dano, who's got like 4 kids driving and can't pay his insurance bill. But, there's, it's crazy to think about that. But it's up to us to be able to kind of pass that on and kind of make sure that those that are coming into the industry have the tools that they need to continue to build. And we definitely need some of those younger folks going into the trades. Yep. And you can have a good living, right? You can do good work, clean work. There's a guy on our job site, he wears a hat that says dirty hands, clean money. And it's like, it's and it's like
profound.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, hey man, this guy's working with his hands on a daily basis, but the money he's bringing home is providing for his family. So as we think about kind of closing out here, I really want to give y'all an opportunity to provide some advice, right? We have listeners from all age groups, whether it's hopefully some high schoolers are going to hear this and they're going to be inspired and they're going to go, my goodness, these women have done an excellent job working their way through the ranks and are in, positions of superiority inside their company and are going to be inspired by it. So if you had the ear of a 15-year-old that's listening to this, or even like a 50-year-old that's listening to it, what kind of advice would you give?
Don't be discouraged. Mistakes will happen. You'll have to go back to square one, but do not be discouraged. Stand up every single time. Like, you're going to fall. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be fun. I think it's like parenting. The first years are not easy. It doesn't get any easier, but it gets a lot more fun. So I think it applies the same to our careers. It's like, don't be discouraged. There will be the downs, but the ups are going to be so worth it. Like, keep going.
When you think about your downs, what brought you out? When you think about your big mistakes, how did you pick yourself back up?
I just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I had to make it right. I just, it's just comes, it's ingrained in me. Mistakes will happen, and what I need to learn the most is not to make that mistake again, and learn from them and just get up. And, I have to do it. Like I said at the beginning, it's for myself. I've made it this far. I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm still learning. And I think that's gonna happen with everyone else. It's like, you're always learning, and try to take out something out of everything that happens around you. There's always a good side and a positive side to it.
I was going to say the same thing. Never stop learning. Complacency is not a good thing. Once you're complacent, you're bored and you're not learning anymore. So never stop learning. Always have goals for yourself, personal and professional goals. And when someone says you can't do something, that should light the fire under you. That should be your objective and your opportunity to say, oh yeah, guess what? Watch me. And it's almost like, tell me I can't do something, and then I'm going to go and do it.
Right.
So always making sure that the sky's the limit. You can achieve anything you set your mind to do. And we're all here on this earth for, a limited time. So make your mark.
Make the most out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with everything you both said. I think one of the things would have helped me early in my career is just, to just be brave. So I think confidence comes with experience. So a lot of people early in their career lack the confidence to be brave. But in this industry, putting yourself out there, just saying what you're thinking and having that confidence is really important, and really, helps you grow your career quickly. That helped me. The confidence came, and it's still growing, but the confidence came at some point in time. And then I think the other big thing is that telling people that, like, you are worthy to be here. You are here because we have chosen you to be here. Or, you mentioned earlier the trust. Yeah. And I think that's really big. There's always going to be, and this isn't just woman specific, people who are young, for example, like, people don't think that they are, I know young people, they've gotten kind of looked down on just because of their age, or so similar to women. There's going to be people out there that maybe don't think you're worthy to be in the position you're in, but that's their issue. You are here, you are to do a job, and you are worthy to be in the position you're in. And I think that's really important at any point in someone's career to feel that. So
I think also having the courage to ask questions, regardless of where you are in your career. There's never a stupid question. So always ask questions, but also know how to listen, because there's a lot that you can retain and learn just by listening. To your point earlier, Dan, we've got this generation, we're about to have a gap. A lot of people are aging out, and how are we going to learn from them? Well, a lot of that comes from listening. So making sure that, my 15-year-old self or protege knows how to listen, because a lot of times, that hamster wheel is already turning in your head, and you might be on to the next thought.
And I think be intentional. Be intentional with your actions, with your thoughts, and
work really hard. I think I've always had that mentality, like, at the end of the day, if I made mistakes or I screwed up, I'd never want someone to say that I didn't work hard. And I have a lot of confidence at the end of the day that to be able to say that, even if the day was completely messed up, at least I gave it my all. And I think people, have that confidence if they do the same. So
I like what you said about speaking up, Kendra. Like, and that's something that I always try to do. Like, when you have a problem at work, like, the best idea wins. I don't care if it's the intern. I don't care if it's the vice president. Whoever has the best idea, that's going to be the path forward. So
Yeah.
I think that's a charge to anybody listening also. It's like, hey, if you're even if you're the low person on the totem pole or you're in the head shed, like being able to listen. So I wrote down some things as y'all were talking, and always learning, right? That's tremendous advice. Whether it's technology, whether it's what's going on in the company culture, there's always an opportunity to learn, right? There's always new systems that are coming out, whether it's what the trade partner's installing, whether it's something to do with BIM or something to do with VDC, always learn. I like what you said about you're going to fall, right? And as a parent, like you always want to protect your kids from the fall, but sometimes that's when you learn. That's when the best learning happens, right? Yeah. When you trip and fall, and it's kind of like understanding that coming into any industry, I think is important, right? You're going to have failures, right? And it's really, are you going to learn from them? We have a new guy on our job. He's been here just a couple months, and I was talking to him the other morning, and I was asking him, I'm like, hey man, how do you think things are going? And he's like, everybody's pretty cool and everybody's pretty chill, but I'm really wondering like when the shoe's going to drop or when somebody's really going to blow up on me. And I was like, look, dude, I'm not a blow up guy because as a guy that made a bunch of mistakes, like I know how bad you feel, but don't make that mistake again. Like, yes, we're going to have a tough conversation, but the conversation is going to be worse if it happens again. So like learn yourself. But really understanding that everybody is going to fail. Regina, you said make your mark. I love the thought of making your mark, right? That's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about the podcast. I want people to listen to it. I want people to hear it. I want them to learn from it, right? And so as you go into the industry, be yourself also, right? Be who you're called to be. Don't try to be somebody's forcing you in this box, right? And they're saying, this is what we need. Yep, do these things, but also be yourself. So I love that. I love what you said about asking questions. As somebody that's been a direct report and somebody that has direct reports, it's two different stances, right? As the direct report, you're like, I don't want to look stupid. I'm not going to ask this question. But at the same time, as the supervisor, I'm like, don't run down this road for 2 weeks trying to do something without asking, right? So it's tremendous advice there about asking questions. Work hard. Yeah. There's really no substitute for hard work, right? And also being intentional. I think you said intentional as well, as being intentional about what you're doing. You talked about having goals every year. Those are all great things. And understanding that you are worthy, right? Understand that you are trusted. And some of that self-talk, right? If you're in the midst of the fire, it's kind of like, I was chosen for this job. I was chosen to be here. I am trusted. And when I make that phone call, I might lose a little bit of trust, but they're still going to trust me. I'm still going to be in this role. So I think that's all great advice. And so those folks that are listening, write those things down, right? Think about what your goals are this year. How are you going to work hard? How are you going to be a learner? So it was so awesome to have y'all in here today. I really appreciate y'all taking the time. I appreciate y'all sharing some about yourself and sharing some about your success story. So thanks for being here, and make sure to share the podcast when it comes out.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
this is great.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.